Hamlin here. Thanks for joining me today. In this video I want to talk about something that was actually sent to me from one of my email subscribers about, I'm going to call it articulation, but in particular where this came from was he was asking me about a certain sound that he heard on a B.B. King recording. And it really came to be obvious that the big thing was how B.B. was playing the note. And believe me, it's not just B.B. King. I'm using this example because that's where that came from in that email. But this is something that everybody does, and it's one of those things that we really don't think about. You know, if you're a guitar player and you've been playing for a long time, how you attack a note is something that you kind of take for granted. If you're new to soloing or you're new to playing guitar in general, it's a huge deal and something that probably hasn't really been explained. So what we're going to do is talk about a couple of different ways to attack a note, okay? So let's start with a very simple note, shall we? A. All right, so we're going to start with this A right here at the 10th fret of the 2nd string. Now, of course, I'm using this and I'm putting my 3rd finger there. And I'm doing that because this kind of fits with my, I'll say my 4-note solo box, which is something that I use a lot, that I used kind of coming into this lesson. Okay, so one thing I can do is I can strike it very soft. So my pick is just barely hitting the note, or I can hit it hard. You should be able to get varying degrees. You ideally should be able to get about a half a dozen different volumes pretty easily with your pick. You want to develop enough control that you can get 6 to 8 to 10 even different volumes, you know, discernible different volumes, you know, with your pick, okay? Now, that's of course if we're just playing one note. Now, there's other things that I can do. For example, when I strike the note, instead of just striking it, I could do a grace note leading up to it. Okay, so I take a note below this note in the scale that I'm in. Now this, you do have to know the scale. Okay, but I can, from the note below it, hit it, or from the note above it. So a grace note means as soon as I strike it, it's gone, and I get to the note that I want to get. So really, it's kind of a lead-in to a note. A grace note sort of falls into the note that it's supposed to be at, okay? Now, alternately, we have what are called turns, or I call them tweedlies, where I strike the note that I want and immediately hit the note above it and come back with a hammer-on and pull-off. And I've explained these in other videos as well, so you may already know how to do it, but that's another way to articulate a note. Now, all three of those are assuming that we're playing one single note, okay? I haven't really talked about going between notes, but there's one other thing, of course, that we can do, and that is to hit a note, give it a little sugar, right? So add a little vibrato to it, and vibrato is basically just a slow, slight bend. So I do a little bit of a bend and just kind of shake the guitar neck up and down. And again, I've done other videos that explain, you know, how to do vibrato. So I'm not going to get too carried away with it here, but that is another way to articulate a note. You can have it, you know, just the straight note or with some vibrato. I can also slide into a note, okay? So instead of just hitting that note, I can slide into it. I can also do a rake. Okay, so what I'm doing for a rake, this is a little bit more tricky because you see these other two fingers are laying down across these other strings. So I only get the note I want. And again, I could slide and rake. Or just the rake. So now I've got slide, rake, and vibrato. And probably more often than not, you know, as you get more comfortable with this, you will start sort of combining these different articulations, okay? The one thing that's really, really important is if you try to throw all this stuff in, you know, right from the get-go, you know, maybe you learn a new lick, right? And you're trying to worry about vibrato and playing notes staccato and doing a slide or doing a grace note or all these different things. Before you can even play, you know, it's going to be really hard to add in any of that extra stuff. So make sure that you can play it, I'll say straight, before you try to add in a whole bunch of different articulation. The main thing about kind of hipping you to all this articulation stuff is for your listening ears. So when you're listening to something, or let's say you're practicing along with me on a lick, or you're practicing along with a B.B. King recording, or a Freddie King recording, or a Stevie Ray Vaughan recording, and you know you've got the notes right, but you also know, man, it just doesn't sound right. Okay, well, now's when you want to start listening for how are they approaching that note. Maybe they bent up to that note instead of striking it straight, okay? Or maybe, you know, there's some vibrato going on there, or what happens a lot is there's a little bit of staccato going on, so the notes have some nice separation. So when you play it, if you're not doing that staccato, you're not hearing that separation between the notes, and it just sounds weird. There are definitely times when that articulation and those little subtleties of how the note is approached can have an enormous impact on the overall sound of the phrase that you're playing. Okay, so I hope this kind of, you know, like I say, expands your listening ears a little bit, and the next time that you're listening to something, you listen for how those notes are being played, and I hope it helps you, and I will see you in the next video.